streaming operational? Is it operational?
Yeah, I
now?
think so.
Oh, I think it is. Very good. Well, sorry about that. This is Monday.
Well, it's not our fault that this is streaming, and I still can't find my piece of paper. What I did want to tell you is that the Weather Facts program on YIT, for those of you who get your weather facts, and we're really pleased to see that people are getting true weather facts from the Met Service, because it is the most accurate weather data that you can get. It has crashed on YIT. Mike has fixed it over the weekend, so those of you who want to get weather facts, just go straight onto YIT as you would normally do. The G at yit.nz, and the square bracket, you don't put anything in the subject line, just the square bracket weather. And I've lost my piece of paper for the instructions, but you can get that if you haven't got used to getting it back again. And I had to ask North Star how to get it if you're used to getting it on on the airmail SailDocs program, because we have a weather facts program, but it is available on there if you go down to WinLink 2K and scroll down the myriad of things to look for South Pacific. I don't know, it might be Southwest Pacific, but anyway, you'll know where it is. So good morning, everybody. It looks like the chat program carried on, despite the fact that the streaming looked as if it was off. All right, yes, it was off. So very confusing here this morning. Is there anybody that wants to contact Old Harbour Radio? Please call. Well, good morning, and what is it like, Graham, at Minerva? Okay, 21 degrees, but it's a lot warmer than here. We're going to have our coldest night tonight. It's going to drop to 8. South-southeast 8. Well, it's improved on the wind side of things, but apart from the rain. Boy, I tell you what, though, if you'd been back home, you would have got sick of the rain too. It has been just thoroughly miserable here. And I wasn't all that clear at the start, but those people getting weather faxes will be able to get weather faxes again today. So that's all fixed now. And by the way, if something does go awry on those sorts of things, very quickly, just email Mike. It's mike@yit.nz, mike@yit.nz, because unless you tell us, we won't know that something is wrong, because obviously we all back here get on the internet for these sorts of things. And if something has gone amiss, let us know. Certainly thanks to North Star for passing that information on so that it got fixed. All right. What was that? Oh, it's time. Yes, I've just been reminded. It is time for weather. We'll pick up on anything else after the weather. Here's David.
Okay, everybody. All kinds of excitement here this morning. And everyone is primed and ready to go north. From what we could see, we've heard quite a few have left already. Sunday for some of you, and today for the rest, I guess. Now, today, just north of the coast, New Zealand, we'll be looking at southwest winds, 20 knots in the mean, and you know what I mean when I say mean, veering to become southerlies a little bit later on as you continue to head north. Now, these southerlies will actually continue through Tuesday and Wednesday, but they'll become south-southeast if you're heading toward New Caledonia. Southerlies if you're heading toward Fiji or Tonga, south-southeast if you're heading toward Newcastle. The upper levels are giving us a bit of a break. By Wednesday, the shortwave trough that's been over New Zealand over the weekend moves its axis to about 170 west, and a narrow 500 ridge, well, it just hangs in there over the Tasman. which is pretty good news. Now this is followed by another narrow 500 shortwave over Tasmania. So that's going to be bringing poor weather for that area. So the synoptic surface picture this morning shows our old depression, and boy, it was pretty rotten weather over the weekend. That's now well east of the country, while we have a narrow, very narrow high lying midway in the Tasman. Now winds from this high are southerly quadrant all the way to New Caledonia today. So that's the shape of the isobars. If you were a rocket ship, that would be good news. Now the wind circulation around the low to the east, makes for cyclonic winds up to about 30 south if you're heading to Fiji or Tonga. So basically up there at 30 south, you'd be looking at westerly quadrant winds. Now, as all of you are probably looking at GFS on your grids, some of you are getting ECMWF if you haven't left yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some data from UK Met, just to give you a different model. And this is going to go out to Friday of this week, which is 1st of June. Boy, this month has gone pretty fast. So by noon tomorrow, Tuesday, expect southerlies right up to 30 south. If, like I said, you're going to Fiji or Tonga, and those winds will be up to 20 knots. And then southeast to southeast if you're going to New Caledonia, and they'll be a little bit lighter, about 10 to 15 knots. On Wednesday, much the same. Light air, about 10 to 15 knots. The directions I gave you hold pretty much for Wednesday. Now Thursday at 30 south, which is about where you would be if you left today, the winds there will be southwest about 10 to 15. Again, if you're going to Fiji or Tonga, but easterlies if you're going to New Cal, they're about 10 to 15 knots. On Friday of this week, the high pushes east of New Zealand as the ridge to the north really narrows. It's quite skiddy, and therefore between 30 south right to 25 south, you could expect east to east northeast winds if you're going to Fiji or Tonga, or Minerva for that matter, but northerlies if you're going to New Caledonia. So not very good by Friday if you're going to New Cal, all headwinds. Now a depression looks to form south of New Cal actually, then on near actually 27 and 167 east, and it will have a frontal band that extends right to New Caledonia. And we have yet another depression that's going to lie in the mid-Tasman on that day as well. That's Friday. Now that's UK Met, so a different model, and you could use that to compare with your grids. Now GFS, looking at a different model now on Friday, has a slightly different take on everything. And it has a frontal band running north right up 175 east, affecting Vanuatu. So that means winds from 25 south to Fiji or Tonga are going to be easterlies in the 15-knot range. And on Saturday, the 2nd of June, the folks, if you're at Minerva Reef, should be seeing easterlies with convective activity, I think, while a trough affects Fiji and Tonga then. And we see a polar dip across Tonga then as well. And a depression may form on that polar dip. If not, there may be just a trough there. Now on Sunday, the 3rd of June, an active trough is going to lie over Fiji and Tonga, and a front will be running north from 35 south, right up and down 177 east, all the way to Fiji. Now EC picks up this frontal band as well, but shows a low forming near Vanuatu, moving to just south of Fiji by Monday the 4th of July, which is also Queen's birthday.
4th of June, actually.
4th of June. What did I say, July?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Well, shows you where my mind is, the 4th of July. Okay, Queen's birthday, the 4th of June. A slight low near Vanuatu, and that will be just south of Fiji on the 4th of June, Queen's birthday. Okay, so that's the prognosis for the boats that have just left. Now, those of you that are in Minerva, the bunch of you that are there, you have found out that the forecast we gave before we left you on Saturday was pretty correct with regard to the active trough. It's still over Minerva, looking at satellite imagery, and it also affects Tonga in a rather broken fashion for Tonga, but certainly Fiji as it extends northwest from there to just east of the banks, and then it goes on to the Solomons. Now, satellite imagery confirms all of this using IR imagery. In fact, there is an area that's just to the west of Fiji where we have a developed weak depression. Now, we've been talking about this depression for a week now. Well, it's there. Winds on the north side of the trough that is part of this depression from Minerva to Fiji are northerly quadrant, but southeast if you're south of this axis. Now, by tomorrow, as promised, Minerva wind should shift to become southerlies, maybe even a little bit earlier. This is could be anywhere from breakfast to lunch. I see these southerlies, but it may happen before that. And I can't remember what Graham said his winds were at the moment.
South-southeast 8.
South-southeast. So it's getting there. Anyway, those winds are going to continue all the way to Tonga, where most of you are going, or Fiji if that's the case. So that's good news. Now, when you're leaving tomorrow, if you do go, expect cloud and showers. That may dog the trip because we do have convective activity between Minerva and the island. So it's still a fairly broad base of activity that's occurring. Now, Wednesday, for those that are still in Minerva, the wind shift to the southeast about 15 knots. So the trades are back. 15 knots southeast for Minerva on Wednesday. But in any case, keep expecting some convective activity to occur. Now, Tonga, moving over there, is getting the effects of the active trough and the low that's heading its way, especially in the south, Tonga Tapu, where you can expect showers and thunderstorms today. Now, a little bit better conditions for the Hapais and Vavau, but I think tomorrow we'll probably see more of the same. Now, winds by lunch today look to be northeast, quite fresh for Tonga, I think in the 20 knot range. Now, later today, you're probably going to see a shift to the north and possibly even the northwest for the Hapais. And Tuesday, stronger winds, I think. I'm looking at about 25 knots, and you may have gusts to 30 or so, and that's as this low gets a little bit closer. So be sure that you pick your anchor site fairly well due to this weather that's coming in. There probably will be cyclonic winds, and that means that they could be from a variety of directions. So don't anchor too close to shore. That's all we could say. Fiji now has that depression that's just to the west of Viti Levu, and our trough I mentioned is embedded in this low, and that affects the entire country. Now, Fiji Met has continued to issue what they call now a damaging heavy swell warning, and they also have a strong wind warning for all areas. Now, seldom do we see a forecast for damaging heavy swell. When we get a tropical cyclone, we naturally see it at that point. But during the cruising season, we don't too often see this. And I think if you remember, I mentioned the high swells forecast. When I looked at it on Saturday, I was looking at 5 meters that were heading up to the Fiji area. So it looks like that forecast was quite correct. So be very careful around Fiji if you're moving about or wherever you're anchored. And due to the cyclonic wind directions can be virtually anywhere. More than likely, you'll be seeing east to northeast and maybe north. I think that's the general direction for Fiji. But expect 25 to 30 knots. And again, these swells are going to be in the open water. They'll be a good 4.5 meters, might even be 5 meters. So they're very, very big. So again, caution. And strong winds, I believe, again tomorrow. And I see convective bands over Vanuatu and New Caledonia on satellite imagery this morning. So again, cloud and showers for both areas. Expect southeast winds also for both areas. For Vanuatu, about 15 to 20 knots. But for New Caledonia and the southern lagoon, you may see up to 25 knots. So quite fresh, not very good for being out exploring the lagoon under those conditions. So that pretty much sums up the weather. I thought I'd give you a brief summary on how the models performed over the last week up until now, from last week until today. GFS was the first one to pick up the small depression that's west of Fiji. Now that was followed a few days later by ECNWF, and UK Met. They picked that up a few days later. Now, Predict Winds, they have what they call their supermodels. I'm not sure exactly what they're called, but they claim these models to be the most accurate of all the models available. Well, they didn't pick up the feature at all last week, and nor do they pick it up even now, and it is there. So satellite imagery today definitely shows the low using the IR imagery. I haven't quite looked at the visible imagery yet where you'll be able to see the rotation pretty good. The microwave wind satellite is picking up cyclonic flow, so that's the total proof of the weak depression. And finally, Fiji Met is picking up the disturbance as a depression today as well. So that's the week's comparison on models. And about the only thing that you should take from all of this, again, are that models are just an idea of what the weather may do, and that's based on incomplete initial data, and those are plugged into formulas of the atmosphere that are not fully developed. So buyer beware. Don't take these models as gospel. Listen to us. Go for radio. Yeah, that's it. Any questions or comments, come now.
I don't think we'll have too much on streaming. They'll all be, well, those that are not leaving will be resting in bed, and those that are leaving will be rushing around. Mezzaluna is leaving today, and who else? Non-stop. They made me chuckle. They're joining the rush hour, they said, on State Highway 1 out of Opua this morning. There's no questions on streaming, and I do apologise. I think I might have caused the crash of our streaming because I was getting input. We have this wondrous channel that we go to for all live sports around the world, and of course I was following the Indy 500 there, and I think that's what caused the problem. It couldn't cope with what was coming in and going out at the same time. Not all that brilliant Wi-Fi system here. Just to let you know, those that are travelling towards the east, Margarita has it quite civilized at the moment, east-southeast 6. And they're way over at 164.22 west at 24 south, so not too bad there, in the swells at 2 meters southerly, so reasonably civilized. All right, I wouldn't mind hearing from Y to see where they are. Y, are you on frequency? That's a concern. All right, just for those that are just resting in bed, I don't think there's any other questions from anybody else, but I'll just do a pause. Go ahead, Ron.
Roger, you did have lightning calling you last night with a lightning, and I can give John a call on why if you want.
Yeah, thank you. Wavelength have probably just, well, they might still be here, so I won't hear them. Yeah, pick up Wavelength and then, yeah, give a call, please. It's all yours.
But one thing, self-operated copy. What the university of next self-operated? What I copied you at 3321 cell 174578 7 knots and heavy of 202 and wind of 50 with 30 cover and 3 kilometre slow cavity cell speed. That I didn't actually want these problems that all copy self over.
Yeah, you're a good copy, Ron. Thank you. And let's see if we can find. Well, that 3 to 4 meters is a bit sporty, isn't it? But the wind is the same direction, so I suppose it's not too bad. And you never expect to sleep on the first night anyway. All right, says she, sitting here comfortably in the warm. Yeah, try for Y. Over.
Gotcha. Why? Self-operated, you copy self. Nothing to
All right, thank you for trying. And right, we've got a few people going to sit this particular passage out. That's just for David's information. There's a lot of weather out there, in fact, including on the eastern states of the United States, because people in Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi will not be out enjoying Memorial Day because they're battening down the hatches for subtropical storm Alberto. It's interesting. They don't start officially naming cyclones until June 1st, but this is, in fact, cyclone strength, so they've given it a name. It's all very confusing. They're going to have lots of wind and rain. It's currently hitting Cuba, so they'll be using their Memorial Day holiday to get organised for the storm that's about to hit them. What else have we got to tell you? Actually, there was something interesting. You know, on airfares, they had a breakdown in the paper as to how your airfare is split up. And in fact, less than 50%, should I say, less than 50% of it goes to the airline, 47.2 to be precise, percent. 23%, this is if you're going between Australia and New Zealand, 23% goes in government taxes, airport fees and so on in New Zealand, and 30% of it goes to the same sort of thing in Australia. So you are actually contributing to national income when you fly anywhere, and don't take it all out on the airlines for your the high price of your airfare. I've already talked about the weather facts, so that is now back online on YIT. So if you grab a pencil, you just have to put the square bracket weather. So you do it the usual way, weather facts hyphen New Zealand colon and which ones you want, 0, 24, 48 or 72. That's probably as much as I want to give you today. I can't risk going to the Indy 500 to tell you the end result because I'll cut off streaming again. But I did give you the report from Monaco. Vettel and Ferrari got second behind Ricciardo of Red Bull. Very boring plus 7 seconds, so it wasn't exactly an exciting race. Third place was Hamilton, plus 17, so they certainly didn't risk hitting each other. And Mercedes, then Raikkonen Red Bull, and then Bottas Mercedes. So it was sort of split from the different ones, and that would have been quite close, 18.1, 18.8 between Raikkonen and Bottas, but pretty boring race, really. But I'm sure David will watch it anyway when it's available. Okay, is there one final call? Anybody with anything? Okay, there's a couple there. Toranui, Graham, you're the strongest. Go ahead, and the lady, just stand by. Okay, let's have a look for Minerva possibly leaving tomorrow and what's happening with that load. Here's David.
You're going to Tonga, Graham?
Yes, yes, he is.
It should be okay. The low will have passed by Tuesday, and that's about lunchtime. Leaving Minerva about that time, you should have southerlies about 1.5 knots in that range. There is a trough still over the Fiji area and probably affecting halfway between Minerva and Tonga itself, but it takes, 2.5 days to get to Tonga Tapu. So looking at Wednesday, as you're about halfway there, the winds are going to veer to the southeast, and they'll be in the 15 knot range, maybe 15 to 20, and off and on convective activity. Tonga Tapu looks like it's pretty good weather, and I imagine you'd be there by Thursday. And Thursday we've got wind picks up a bit, about 20 knots out of the southeast for Tonga Tapu, and a fairly active trough over the Hapais, it looks like. The Tonga Tapu, if the model is correct, should have fair weather. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that. Over.
I think so. We're heading straight for the bow, so we'll head on straight up to the bow. Over.
Yeah, on Thursday, if that's the day you arrive, that may have trough conditions. Over.
Okay, like that. All right, that doesn't sound too bad. So thanks for being there, David.
Yeah, the signal is good and strong now. It was a bit dubious earlier on in the net. Clear with Toranui, and there was a lady's voice in behind. Oh, and by the way, Anthea, your report came in. I see you're clearing in at Wunda today. It's a bit of a shame that it's going to be wet and miserable for those people clearing in. It makes it a bit mucky. But thank you for the report. It might have been Alcyon. The lady in behind Toranui, please call again. Well, your radio is very, very light. Just if you've got nothing to do one of these days, just check that you are in fact on high power. Go ahead. Aha. Well, you are nowhere near as strong as Toranui, so there is a bit of work to be done. You're sitting beside them there, so you might like to have a look through and talk to Graham on the VHF and see what he did with his. But yeah, nowhere near as strong. It's very much lighter in terms of strength back here. So there might be a bit of work to do, a bit more grounding to put in if you've got any more copper foil to link to various metal things in the boat. You probably could work it out. It's clear. The signal is clear. There's nothing wrong with the radio. It's just the takeoff that's the problem. So, yep, a bit of work for you to do there. All right, anybody else?
Why?
Well, there they are. We've been wondering what you're up to. Go ahead.
We're just going to park up into South Minerva now and go and put the breakfast over.
Okay, well, that's your conditions are probably still reasonably sporty. Have you been into South Minerva before? Over.
Yeah, Roger. Yeah, we'll be on the next channel about 15 minutes.
All right, we'll let you go then to get your eyes ready for looking through the murk. So South Minerva for Y, and they'll be having breakfast of yellowfin tuna this morning. Boy, there's a lot of tuna out there, and also a lot of mahi-mahi people have been catching. I always feel sad about the mahi-mahis because we usually have two lines out, and there's mum and pa usually both together. It's quite good if you catch both of them, because otherwise they'll get a bit miserable by themselves, won't they? All right, so all is well on Y. Hopefully all is well, but they're going into South Minerva. Probably have a good rest up, and I don't think we've heard from anybody else in South Minerva, but there might be somebody there sheltering from the weather. All right, thanks for that. Anybody else?
Good morning from Alcyone.
Alcyone, you were on there. Alcyone, go ahead.
Good morning, yes, from the other Alcyone. In Tapacapo, this polling night is your weather forecast is spot on. We had some roughly last night. We probably had 15 to maybe 20. And currently have about 10 to 15 east south with the mark.
Okay, so you're actually in the harbour moored to the hard stuff, or are you just outside the harbour? Over.
We are moored inside at the gate.
Oh, okay. Yep, know exactly where you are. Is there much space in there for the interest of those that are coming behind you? Is there much space on the jetty inside, or not? Over.
There is a little place, we laughed if we were in the Mediterranean, we have boats setting boats. But at this point, there's probably a boat width between approximately 10 boats moored right now. There is one outside.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that. All right. So there's a bit of space there in Tongatapu. It just brings back memories. It's always fun listening to you folk. We arrived in Tongatapu and absolutely dreadful strong winds, and so we stayed outside. In fact, we couldn't even get the dinghy. They got a bit cross with us, but there was no way we could get a heavy dinghy raised and off the deck in the winds that we had. So we stayed outside for 3 days before it moderated. It was actually entertaining because while we were out there, a huge new super yacht arrived and just plonked itself right in the middle of the harbour entrance. They had a bit of a disaster on their way from New Zealand. They were heading to the Monaco Boat Show, I think. Well, they didn't get very far because the boom smashed in and damaged and broke the bottom of the carbon fibre mast that had a man overboard that they got back again. They just arrived and just went whew, and stayed put until they were told to move out of the middle of the harbour. But yeah, it was fairly sporty, and we spent our time actually with the New Zealand boat. What was it? Anyway, we were going from Pangamoto backwards and forwards as the wind changed. All right, thank you for that report from Tonga, and so all is well there. Anybody else for Gulf Harbour Radio? Well, hello, Bill. Have you got Liberation in the water yet? Over. Oh, good show. So Liberation's out of the hole and in the water.
Push the weather there.
Yeah, I presume. Well, we had a report from Mr. Troy. David said, "What's the weather? It's raining." So was all well with the boat from being ashore for that length of time, Bill? Over.
Yeah, Roger.
Oh, the screwdriver dug that out. Alrighty. So, oh, that's good. And I tell you what, you're missing some damn cold, wet weather here, so don't worry too much about the wet weather there, because at least it's warm. It looks like about 25 degrees. So, yep, it's, if you had our 11 degrees, you'd be complaining. Over. All right. Well, thanks for the hello. Okay. Well, we'll go back and turn off streaming now, and we'll talk to you all again tomorrow. This is a Gold Powder Radio. Patricia and David. We're clearing the frequency. It is all yours.